It's 1 o'clock, a little past 1, so we'll begin the EDIC meeting for today, Economic and Development Incentive Committee. Thank everybody for joining us. We have a few items on the agenda. Number 1 is to approve the EDIC minutes of the 4/23/24 meeting. And if there are any changes or corrections, otherwise, we would accept a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we have a new member, so if you don't mind, and I hate to put you on the spot, actually, I don't mind doing that, but if you don't mind introducing yourself, first of all, welcome. I think you'll enjoy it, but if you don't, introduce yourself and maybe give her a little bit of a bio about yourself, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Matt Schlenvoet. I'm over at Gate City Bank. I manage our appraisal and evaluation department. By trade, I'm a certified residential appraiser. Been in the industry for 14 years now on the residential side. I also serve on the North Dakota Appraisal Board as well, and also serve on the it's called the Association of Appraisal Regulatory Officials. It's a national association for all state regulators. Born and raised here in Fargo, proud North Sider, and Concordia College from there, and Dakota School of Banking after that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pipcorn put you on because you're a North Sider? Is that what's going on here?
Come on, there are no home, there's no home field advantage, right? Very good. With that, we'll move on to number 2. It's the Precision Dental New Industry Pilot Application. And Jim Gilmore will get us started off with that. Jim.
Okay, thank you. Precision Dental, they're looking at building a new facility in the kind of that Cheyenne Loop Industrial Park up near the Horse Park. I didn't get time to put a map together to show you where it is. I'm going to have Ryan come up right away. He's most familiar with this project, but it would be a 5-year property tax exemption on a new building. They'd be moving from a location they now have downtown to this particular location. Ryan?
Thanks, Jim. Hi, members of the committee. Ryan Oss, I'm Chief Business Development Officer with the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Corporation. So been familiar with Precision Dental for a number of years. Been meeting with them as we do our business retention expansion visits. Have known for some time that they're running out of room. They operate out of 6 Broadway, which is just down the street downtown near the railroad tracks. And if you think about that space in terms of manufacturing, it's probably not what you would consider to be a really conducive space for a whole host of manufacturing activities, receiving, shipping. And so the company, it's been around for several decades. It's kind of at an inflection point now as they're pursuing additional markets outside of the region, primary sector certified company. They currently operate in around 9,000 square feet of space. And so they're looking at taking that next leap, growing their enterprise. And so they're looking at a new building in the kind of north of the industrial park that Jim described. And so that 15,000 square feet of space represents an expansion that's going to allow them to add additional machinery, bring on new talent. And I'm excited to bring up Ian Johnson, who's Vice President at Precision Dental in a moment. Really excited about their story. I hope he's going to tell you about some of the talent that they've attracted to this market. It's pretty remarkable. It's national talent moving to this community, global talent moving to this community because of the type of company that they are and the type of people that they're bringing on board. So you can see in your packets, they're adding some really high-paying jobs. Not a tremendous amount of jobs, but the first 2 years will be 2 positions over $35 an hour and 6 positions by year 2 over $31.25 an hour. That land that they're looking at is currently producing, property tax revenue just under $3,500 a year. So they're gonna, with their improvement, significantly increase the property value there. So with that, I will maybe invite Ian Johnson, who's Vice President at Precision Dental, and I'll also recognize Michael Johnson, who's the president and your founder of the company, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So Ian, please come up and tell us about the project a little bit.
Thank you guys for having me today. As he said, my name is Ian. I am the Vice President at Precision. I have been there for about 15 years now. I don't assume that a dental laboratory is something that everyone is super familiar with. I just assume that people get teeth in their mouth and they just think they magically appear. So let me kind of give you a little rough idea of what we do. Precision is a dental appliance manufacturing company founded in '85 in Fargo, specializes in custom dental implant, crown and bridge, and removable denture, partial denture types of restorations. PDL grew from what we would call a mom and pop shop, a one-man operation in 1985, to where we are at now, which is currently roughly 40 employees at our manufacturing facility. With these 40 employees, multiple different talent levels, multiple different industries that have kind of come together to allow us to do what we do, utilizing state-of-the-art CNC milling operations, 3D printing, much further from where we started in that more traditional analog, hand-worked type of environment. What I want to kind of help paint a picture of what this project does for us. Precision has grown steadily over the past decade and been able to recruit new talent from all over. I would like to say that I wish that I could say that we had a pool of talent in our own backyard that we'd be able to pull from, but our industry is hyper specialized, requires a lot of training, and just generally takes a lot of time to become fluent in that sector. So we've had to get creative in terms of how we find staff. At least the caliber of employee that we're looking for. That's involved a lot of recruiting, some super successful campaigns, some less successful, but ultimately spending our years looking for talent. We kind of went, 10 years ago looking at what our staff looked like, probably a lot of individuals from our own backyard. Now looking at it, we have a team who has recently called cities like San Diego, Havana, Cuba, Seoul, South Korea, Mexico City, Salt Lake City, and many more, calling those places home before they have moved here to start a family, buy homes, and take up a career at Precision. But because of that steady growth, it's meant that our current facility really doesn't meet our needs anymore. Our day-to-day operations in many ways have been interrupted simply by the limitations of our physical space. I joke that if this business was a family, we had our third kid and realized that we were living in a one-bedroom house too late. So the idea of operating in a 1900s building in downtown on 2 floors, if you've stepped inside of a manufacturing facility, it's the nightmare you can probably assume. 2 floors, people up and down all day. The left arm doesn't know what the right arm is doing. So this project is really in a way to address that problem. We've attempted to renovate. We have done countless projects, spent a lot of money just to find out that we're kind of just shifting spaces. We think that we solve a problem by a renovation project here, just to turn around and find out that we now have outgrown this area. And our research has shown that moving this facility into a larger production center, specifically designed for our intended use, will impact our efficiencies nearly immediately. It would allow us to focus on facilitating our growth and our recruitment and our advancements in automation. With that being said, this truly is an expansion project through and through. As Ryan said, we'll go from about 9,000 square feet that we currently operate on 2 floors to a state-of-the-art, one-level production facility that roughly sits at about 15,000 square feet, with the ability to add on an additional 5,000 square feet as growth allows for it. This will allow us not only to bring on more employees and to strategize our growth and really lean into those trajectories, but it'll allow us to take our staff that we have currently, create state-of-the-art training facilities because it is such a hyper-specialized industry, and focus that back on the staff. By designing the space from the ground up, For this intended purpose, we'll be able to create avenues towards true lean manufacturing processes and efficiencies, as well as investing in state-of-the-art CNC milling operations, advancements in 3D printing, and just keeping up with what the dental industry is requiring of us currently. Hopefully that answers some questions. If you have any more, I'd gladly take them.
If you don't mind me asking a question, so are most of your customers then the local dentists in our area, or is it regional, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so we do work with a lion's share of the local dental population. I would say primarily, if you were to look at the bulk of our business, it's done North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming. Some of our biggest customers are as far east as New York City, as far west as Seattle, but that 5-state region is primarily where you see the lion's share of our business done.
Very good. Any other questions? And I guess the other thing is, obviously, you're going to expand. Some employees now, but you have potential to expand more later. Is that kind of your summary of that?
Exactly. We have reached a point where, simply based on the physical limitations of the space, we do need to look at hiring immediately. I need to look for replacements for myself and for other leadership individuals in the company. We physically do not have space to put anyone, so it's kind of, we've had to pause on that growth until we were able to address the space. So that's the biggest part there.
Any other comments or questions from anyone? And you're asking for a 5-year exemption, and your commitment is for 2 employees in the short term, and both those are over $35 an hour.
Correct, yes.
Jim, do you have anything else to add?
Just note that on our scoring system, this did receive a good score, and the recommendation of staff is for approval.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we will accept a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Mayor?
I was under the impression a lot of people are doing implants versus going into the dentures. Is that what's happening, or do you still have a big
Yes.
market in dentures?
There's still, I would say, if you look at geographically, certain populations tend to be more in the rural aspect, tend to have more partials and dentures, whether that be a cost thing or simply just based on an education component. That's typically where we see a lot of our work like that coming from. But as the industry as a whole continues to grow, you see a significant uptick in implant restorations. We used to look at trying to save 1 or 2 teeth at a time, and now really the science and technology has allowed us to say we're going to start from scratch or getting a whole new mouth, and that requires a lot of dental implant work.
And then I was under the impression now the 3D printer takes away all the artistry. You don't have to have that fine stuff anymore, or do you still have to have?
You definitely do. I would say that you still have to know what the picture needs to look like. So that artistry is still a massive component. What is allowed for is after the kind of economic downturn, you saw a lot of mom and pop or smaller dental laboratories simply fold. So we had at the time about 75,000 employees or dental technicians, nationwide, and you saw that plummet to about 38,000 within the matter of a few years. So when you look at the multi-billion-dollar industry that dentistry is, it continues to climb. The demand for what we do continues to grow. It's endless, but we have half the workforce that we used to have. So 3D printing has allowed us to say the 80% that can be automated and needs to be exact due to maybe it's surgical limitations. Those variables have now been calculated and allowed to run through 3D printing, automation, CNC milling. The end of it, though, the part that we like to call the artistry, the 10%, that still needs to be done by hand. It still requires a trained eye to say this does or does not look lifelike. The computer will do what it tells you to, essentially, but not be able to differentiate necessarily aesthetic from non-aesthetic.
Very good. Any other comments? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And number 3, the last item on our agenda, congratulations and good luck. Thank you for coming. Number 3, application fee rates for TIFs and pilots. Jim Gilmore.
Thank you. The main reason for bringing this forward is to set a fee for these TIF renewal plans where we're not doing that but for tails up front. So they'll use the Linkstead block. We're not sending that to our financial consultant. It usually costs $2,500 to review. So it didn't make sense to keep the fee at $5,000 or even $2,500. So I'm suggesting fees for those would be, $2,000. If they kind of increase the request, then there'd be a larger fee later. And so I'm recommending $2,000 for that. And then the general application fee for pilots and TIFs, it's been $250, I think, probably for over 20 years. And when you look at the time that Mike puts in on it, felt like it would probably more appropriate to bring that to about $400. So those are the two main changes.
So if you don't mind asking, Jim, so basically these fees haven't changed for maybe since Commissioner Cosgrove was a city commissioner, but part of it is, we have costs, especially when we send these out to have these reviewed. And so basically a lot of this is just reimbursing us for our time. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I think the 400, the basic fee hasn't really changed again since probably John was on the commission. The TIF and pilot fees, those are relatively new. We probably started to do those about 5 to 10 years ago, and those seem to be adequate because the PFM is doing the reviews now, has been charging us less than the other, I think, big utility had been charging. They've gotten really good at doing the reviews relatively affordably.
So can I ask you, Jim, and I don't know if you've talked to prospective people, but I guess the main thing is you want to make sure, I would say they have a lot of costs when they're going to be doing a project. And to me, this is a pretty minimal one. And actually, John, maybe you can ask, from the perspective of applications, to me, this doesn't seem like unreasonable. What do you think?
No, I think with the taking out the ones that don't have financial review, that it's a cost recovery mode for the city, and they do have to commit to these projects. But this is a lot of work on the city's part, and I think it's appropriate.
I guess I'm looking for a recommendation to forward these fees to the city commission.
I don't know if there's any comments or questions, but the other thing, if you wouldn't mind, Jim, is if this is approved, to make sure that we have opportunity for comment from the people that are doing the application, so they have a chance to get their say. If we can make that happen, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll talk to the EDC about it and just see if they feel that's going to be a deterrent for people applying. So
I apologize. They were sitting here earlier, and so we should have caught them if we would have been on the ball. But I do think we want to make sure, and actually, if you don't mind, just to make sure that we're fairly in the ballpark with surrounding cities and things like that, just to make sure that we're semi in the ballpark.
I can check on that also.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do you have a second?
Second the motion.
There you go. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just had a quick question for Jim.
Go ahead.
So the TIF interest rates, city bonding rate plus 1%. So just out of curiosity, what's the current city bonding rate? Not to put you on the spot if you don't know, that's
I was
okay.
going to put Dave on the spot. He's our finance commissioner. I think they're around
And
5.
actually,
5%,
the one thing I will say, it's a whole lot higher than it was 2 years ago, because it used to be, 2%, and it was unfortunate. I was trying to tell the mayor we needed to borrow a whole lot more money a couple of years ago, but
I think they're 4 to 5% right now. I'd have to check with finance, but
Maybe up to 5
you're right.
1/4.
We were probably at 2.5% just 3 years ago.
it was.
Following suit with,
If you're going to give us a good deal, we'd be happy to look at it then.
But can I just add one thing, because we're going to, but the other thing is what's happened with Epic, that's a cautionary tale for us. It's a good lesson to learn that we love having developers, but it's for us, you have to be very careful, because it's not only that project, but it impacts the whole city and multiple cities. And so anyway, obviously
Yeah.
we wish them well and all that, but I mean, what has happened? People lost their jobs. This is going to have an impact on budgets for a lot of cities for a long time, I believe. So anyway,
That's
that's one way to avoid answering the question when he puts you on the spot. But
I think that's a good point. I had another, one of our other committee members ask me about that. And so, for instance, on, Block 9, we did background checks on, RDO and Kilbourne and Bergam to see if, do they have the financial strength to get this done? We had corporate guarantees, we have clawbacks, we have, step-in rights on the ownership of the parking ramp. And so really through the city attorney's office and our other consultants, anytime the city is borrowing money and, putting money into a project, that's, we do that really reluctantly. Most of these are pay-as-you-go. We're not actually writing anyone a check. And I'm sure Commissioner Pepcorn recalls when Epic, first approached us about, us financing the parking ramp at the Eola, Anderson Field site. We looked at that and saw it as being more of a high risk for the city, given their, financial situation and looking at revenue, looking at expenses, and it indicated to them that the city was not going to, participate as the bank and finance that parking ramp. And then they were going to do it themselves, and then that didn't work out either.
And so one thing I just want to add is, the other thing is, so the accounting firms, they will review the numbers and verify the numbers, but that's not everything. And so for us to make sure the integrity, the horsepower, things like that, those are a lot of questions that don't always show up on a financial review. And that's why we have to be very careful, because obviously we're spending the public's money. And so it's a cautionary tale. And I think we've been good at being careful about this. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to thank Jim, immediately after this happened, Jim was checking what are our exposure, what is the exposure of the city of Fargo. And so thank you very much for doing that, because that's important for part of it. That's what we're doing here, and why it's an important job. So with that, that's the end of my sermon for today. But thank you all for coming. And I guess, do we have a motion and a second for the fees?
Yep.
Yeah, we did
I believe
already.
we do. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That's it for today. We are adjourned. Have a good afternoon.